Righto, so we've got our project called temp. If you weren't sure how to do that, it was just file, new project, and I'll put it somewhere. In my project, I'm going to have a HTML file and a JavaScript file. So in here, I'll right click, go new, get HTML file. Just going to call it temp as well. Remember, your temp will have a fair bit of structure to it already. When we go and do the same thing with our JavaScript file, again, just for simplicity, I'll call it temp as well. Okay, your JavaScript's got nothing in it at all. Okay, we then go and have a look. I can change the title of that. I'm just going to call it temperature. What is the go with that temperature word? Where will it end up? Yeah.
On the top of the
So it's like the tab name type of thing. Okay, back to here. How do I get something up the top like a heading?
H1.
Okay, I better find the right page. Here we are. Okay, so if I put a H1, okay, so there is my temperature converter ready to rip. I then just want a place where I can put my Celcius. That's the right spelling, I think. Okay, after that, I need a little box that I can put some input into. How might we do that? So how do we get input from somebody? Okay, input. Okay, first thing we do is give it an ID. Your parents gave you an ID so they could yell at you when they were angry. Okay, so ID is exactly the same. What is a good ID for this one? Okay, might call it Celcius, and that'll do. What other things should we put in here? Yeah, but before we do that, okay, what type of thing are we going to do? Is what we're entering a date or an email address? Just a number. So remember, numbers mean that you can't put words in it. So you couldn't go and start typing A, B, C, D, E in there. Okay, we always put a temperature. So let's say we put 20. What does that value equals 20 do? Yes, the starting value or the default value. Okay, if we have a look at it now, here it is loading up eventually. Taking an awful long time to do, not a lot. Okay, so there's our temperature converter. There's our value, our 20. Because we made it as a number, you can see that it's got the arrows on the end so I can go up and down quite easily. Okay, also at the top, the actual tab is called temperature, which is handy for us. Okay, next on my list, looking here, I want a little conversion button. So let's make a button. Okay, I'm going to jam it on a new line. So good old BR for break is the equivalent of hitting enter. We just shuffle down a line. Okay, what are we going to do with our button? Okay, the ones you use often will work their way to the top of this list, but usually we will say on click. So in other words, when we click on this thing, there is other ones called on hover and stuff like that. So if you're a lazy sod and can't even have the strength to click a button, you can just hover over it and it will work. But on click, okay, and I'm going to call it convert temp. Okay, why did I put the brackets after temp? So the curved brackets, why are they cuddling each other?
So you show it's a function?
Lovely, George. Okay, so they are a function. So when I click on this button, it is going to go and run this function for me. We haven't done that function yet, but we will. Okay, we close that. The next little bit is the text that will appear on my button.
Convert to whatever.
Okay. So here is our thing. We've got our bit, and you'll see it says convert the temperature. I can click that. It looks like a button. Clearly, it doesn't have that function to go and run, but it does exist.
Yeah, a couple more breaks, maybe 3 more breaks.
Okay, below that, I'm going to put maybe a couple of breaks just to get the other stuff. And
Yeah, I'll keep playing.
okay, that may be how you spell Fahrenheit. It may not be. You happy with that?
Yeah, no, it's right.
Good, mate. I'll go with that.
No, it's right.
Okay, so Fahrenheit, we're going to say Fahrenheit and then a number. Okay, so what is a good thing to put? So how do I know where I'll put that variable? So we're going to do some calculations in JavaScript and then send it back, and it will say Fahrenheit is whatever, 20 degrees might be 60 Fahrenheit or something like that. So where are we going to put that 60 or 80 or whatever it is? Yeah, but how do you put a, it's not, lovely.
Jeez, you're on the ball, Sean.
You're on fire, well done. Okay.
Two first names.
And just to be very simple, I'm just going to say far here, short for Fahrenheit. So in other words, P is like a place marker. It is saying where are you going to, because we want to put this variable on our page somewhere, and we're telling it this is where it's going to live at the moment. Okay, then we have to do our mate Kelvin. Again, we'll give it an ID. Again, IDs are great. Righto. So, sports update where we are. Very dopey. Okay, so it should say Fahrenheit and then we'll have a value, Kelvin will have a value. Okay, what we need to do now is the JavaScript bit. So HTML, I'm pretty confident I could get a grade 5 or 6 kid and they could master HTML without too much bother. The thing we need to do though is link up our JavaScript, and this is where some of you will be struggling. So if I go to script, source equals, and it will say these are all the files in this project, and strangely enough the one with .js will be our JavaScript file. Radical thing, but JS may be short for JavaScript. Okay, so all that is doing is saying this is where you'll find some script. So if you're running a thing like a function or any of that type of stuff, this is where your main sort of code is going to live. Okay. Do we need to do anything else with this at the moment? No. And again, because we had a plan, making that takes no time at all. So it takes you 20 seconds to scribble something like that. And then it's just, how do I do this bit? How do I add a box with an input box? How do I add a comment? A button type of thing. Yes? Yep, sort of like pseudocode. You'd probably want to do it better if you were calling it pseudocode, but essentially it's right. Okay, what variables are we going to need?
So can we just put cell, fat, and kel?
What's that?
So just use like the first 3 letters of each thing.
If you want.
Kelvin.
Okay, I'm going to call them far, cell,
And then Kelvin.
and kel. Okay, do we need any other variables?
The fun, oh no.
Probably not. Okay. Someone tell me what the go is with these function things. I see functions all over the place. James.
Just basically to order it and like break it up into sections.
Lovely. So a function does one job. So we will cheat a bit and do a few jobs in a function, but strictly speaking, a function should do one job. Okay, the name of my function here, strangely enough, needs to match over here. And often what I do is I will cut and paste it there to ensure that I get it correct. Remember, this is case sensitive. So in other words, if you put a capital C and a little c, they are two different things. And that type of stuff. So my convert temperature, we're going to have 3 phases. So we're going to get our input. We're then going to do our calculations. So work out the formula to work out how do you work out Kelvin and Fahrenheit. And then we're going to spit it out at the end. Okay. Righto. What is our first? So we've got 3 stages essentially. So we're going to have 3 separate functions. So what's my first function going to do?
So the Celcius.
To Paris.
Get the Celsius.
Okay. So my first one is going to get Celsius. Okay. Okay. We're going to do some calculations. It's very grim.
I bet you the professionals would actually just put that just to
Well, they talk about in coding about having meaningful variables and function names. So when I was a boy, we were told to use variables like A, B, C, D, E, F, like that, because they didn't take up much space. But 2 days later, you couldn't remember what C was and what D was. But if you see something that's called get Celsius, you see something called do calculations. So it should be to the point where you give it to your parents, your grandparents, your cousin, old mate across the back fence. They should be able to look at your code and at least understand the bare, he's going to do a calculation here. He mightn't have a clue what the syntax looks like, but should be able to do that. And my last one is we've got a function that does the temps. So this is just saying, here's my little bit, do these things for me. Okay, now that we've got that done, we can go and do my first. Righto. Here's our challenge. How do we get something from here? So someone's going to type something in this input box. How do we get it and sort of suck it into JavaScript? It is, okay, document.get element by ID. Which ID are we grabbing?
Celsius.
So this thing over here, we decide to call it Celsius. So again, may as well cut and paste. Okay. What are we going to do with that thing? So that's how we grab it, but where are we going to put it? Yeah, and we need that on the end. Okay, so we're grabbing its value.
And you're putting in Celsius. Then like that.
In the box.
Variable.
Oh, bar cell.
Okay, yep.
Here we go.
So here's my variable. And remember that equal sign isn't like maths. It's not a maths, this equals this. So the left-hand side doesn't have to equal the right-hand side. So essentially we're saying whatever is on the right ends up in here. So cell is like my variable. So I've got 3 of them. So it's like I've got a shoebox called far, one called cell, one called kel. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to, whatever old mate typed in, we're grabbing the value of this input box. That's why if we had multiple input boxes, they'd all have different IDs. Same as your parents have multiple kids potentially, they don't all call you Trevor. Because then when Trevor didn't eat his zucchini, they wouldn't know which Trevor. Me too. It's like kryptonite to me, mate.
Purple onions are pretty bad.
Weakens me. Okay, so do I need to do anything else? Are we done?
Yeah, he's got the Celcius.
And remember, this is a bit like the main mission control one. So it's saying, when I hit my button, it goes here. And then it says, right, go and get me this. It's a bit like someone supervising, and you've got all these different workers. Go and do this for me. Once Trevor's done his job, whatever it is, then it's the next person. So our next one is the beautifully named do calculations.
Straightforward to the point.
Okay, so what calculations, so there must be two because I put an S on the end, or more than one at least. What do we need to calculate?
Fahrenheit and Kelvin.
Okay, so how do we work out far?
Search up on the internet. Sorry, Jim. How to convert
Okay,
Celsius to
I think,
Kelvin. Do we need to do Kelvin like Kelvin to Fahrenheit and Celsius to Fahrenheit? What's the
So you gotta times it by 9/5.
yeah,
So
And
you're
then
not
add 32.
yeah, hey,
Oh, it's all over it.
the old brain's got that. I've got no idea about Kelvin.
don't take away and add, no?
Okay, so essentially all we're doing in here, we get our Fahrenheit, you get your Celsius, you multiply it by 1.8, or if you're a more of a fractions man, you'd be 9/5, and then add 32 to it. Okay, has anyone got the Kelvin formula?
I think it's take this. Hang on, let me take this. I think it's just add or take. Add 273.15.
Really?
Yep.
So the boiling point of water is 100.
So do you not trust me?
I trust you, but I'm thinking it's got to be more complex. I'm a simple bloke.
Yeah, it's 273.15.
I just find that.
So if you put 10, oh, that's the dumbest, that's the worst formula ever. I'm very disappointed in that. Righto.
Well, you don't need a you don't need to work.
Righto. Down the track, it's very disappointed in that. I've always thought that Kelvin was something fancy, like you got this and multiplied it by this and squared it, and then
Absolute zero.
how many fingers you had and how many kittens your cat just had and did all fancy stuff. But you just,
We can make it like that.
that is,
End up making.
it's so disappointing. It's a major letdown for me. Righto, last bit. Okay, gents, this will require you to think a bit.
I'm not very good at that.
I know. Okay, we need to do a job and get stuff from JavaScript now and put it into HTML. So, our first job,
Sorry, there is my two separate messages.
well, we've already got, we don't really need to because we've only got, we're only sending over a number. But I know what you mean though. Yeah. Okay, this one's pretty simple. How do we get something from JavaScript and put it back. Can't be Oliver because he gave a good answer before.
So go to document thingy,
Yep.
and then in HTML, and then you go in
HTML and then
Okay, and we're going to send it to this place, so far here.
document.
So, okay, so in other words, gents, just a little bit of a hush. For this thing, it is saying, I want to send it too far here. That is like me sending a letter to your house and saying, send it to 27 West Street or wherever you live. Just guessed. Okay. With that, we're sending it to this place. If you want to think of inner HTML, is put it into HTML. And then what do we want to put or send to this place? We just want to spend our far variable. So often we might have a message to send, the temperature is blah, blah, blah. But in this case, we're just sending whatever number is associated with our calculation here. Okay, the next one, exactly the same. Okay, except we're sending this one to Kel, because it wouldn't make sense to send Kel to far or far to Kel.
That'd be very far.
That would be wrong.
It would be wrong, and we don't want to be wrong.
That'd be very far.
Okay, so there is our far, there's our Kel. Do we need to do anything else?
Yes.
Yes.
I just don't know what.
Message.
I don't think we do, James.
Oh no, don't you have to put an output?
Well, at least it doesn't work on mine. Maybe it does on yours.
Yeah, the output.
We'll get rid of that silly formula because it's disappointing.
Is everything about for an No.
Righto, after much spinning for some reason. Okay, we convert it. Fingers crossed.
Mine doesn't work.
Okay,
Yours does though.
so far works. So 20 degrees is 68 Fahrenheit. What's happened to our mate Kelvin?
Both mine work.
I've got a theory. Okay, see how I've called my place Kelv here? So I'm just going to call it Kel here. Okay, so it didn't arrive. Why didn't it arrive in my HTML?
Because you had a different word.
I had the wrong address. So it's like saying 27 West Street and the thing arrives at 28 and you're going, wonder why that is. Watched a police show on the holidays and they went into the wrong building and shot the wrong bloke because the 9 had twisted over and it was a 6. It was unlucky for the bloke involved.
Times by whatever. Just add. Celcius.
Okay, how are we going?
Hey, sir.
Oh yes,
No, sir, that's it's concatenating or whatever it is.
is it?
Yeah, see?
Why is that? Why is that?
Because you're just adding them, you gotta do the thing in my bobby.
The thingamabobby.
That is.
Okay, so
That's all it ever said.
if we look at that, gents, our problem is this bit here. So it's using that fancy word concatenate that is a wonderful word in the right audience. Probably not a big one to pick up friends at parties, but at the right party perhaps, but that's right. Okay, so what concatenating does is gets them and joins them a bit like train carriages. So it is getting the 20 and instead of plussing it mathematically, it is just attaching it to the other thing. So essentially this is our little bit. So it's getting this train wagon that's got a 20 and then tacking that thing on the end. How can we make it so it doesn't do that? So where do we fix it?
The far and the Celsius, is there your calculation?
No. No.
Is it the same as
No. Because some of this is a calculation, it just treats it as all a calculation. It's weird. Okay. Please watch, gents. This is golden experience. Okay. How about we use pass float? Why is pass float probably better in this case? Okay, that will allow us to do 26.24 degrees. Okay, so pass float around all of that rubbish. In other words, it gets this bit. So it goes and gets that value, and then it forces it to become a number. Okay, and it won't store it otherwise. So here is my value, it's a number. Now when we go and give this thing a boot, eventually, okay, now our thing is actually doing it mathematically. Okay,
Oh wow, that is 700 degrees Fahrenheit.
okay, if you do things like 100 degrees Celsius is 212 Fahrenheit, and very disappointingly for me, the Kelvin, you just add 273.15. That is the biggest letdown scientifically for me this year.
That's 32 degrees.
I look in envy at science people because I know nothing about it.
89.6 degrees Fahrenheit.
So disappointed.
I'm trying to get it to start at.
Righto, blokes, I'll just stop this. Hope you enjoyed it.
Minus 4 degrees Fahrenheit.